Hello, honeys, and welcome to your bonus extra special coverage of the Louvre 2025 heist. Our sources for today include ArtNet News, BBC, PBS, AP News, and Hyperallergic. And with that out of the way, let's get started. So what exactly happened? According to the BBC, the suspects arrived with a stolen vehicle-mounted mechanical lift, like the kind you'd use to lift furniture into a second or third floor city apartment, and used it to gain access to the gallery of Apollo in the Louvre via a balcony close to the River Seine. They then used a disc cutter to crack open display cases housing the jewelry in that gallery, and in less than 4 minutes made their escape on 2 scooters waiting outside before switching to cars and taking off to the east. According to the French Interior Minister Laurent Nunez, it was the work of a, quote, experienced team who had clearly scouted the location, end quote. According to PBS reports of the local prosecutor's statements, quote, only the, inner quotes, near simultaneous, and inner quote, arrival of police and museum security stopped the thieves from torching the lift and preserved crucial traces, end quote, such as fingerprints. Since the heist went down on the morning of October 19th, various reports have revealed some crucial and also some embarrassing facts about it. President Emmanuel Macron's government revealed last week that the 8 stolen jewels were not privately insured, and later statements from the French Culture Ministry indicated the country would not be reimbursed for any losses linked to the stolen items if they're not recovered by the police. We were at least provided with a reason why, a Culture Ministry spokesperson said in a statement first reported by the French newspaper Le Parisien and requoted by some of our other sources, quote, the state acts as its own insurer when National Museums' works are in their typical place of conservation, end quote. Even more embarrassing, though, a French government audit that was at first leaked to Radio France and made public shortly after revealed that the museum's security system was, quote, outdated and inadequate, end quote. That audit was conducted by France's Court of Auditors, which is functionally equivalent to the U.S. Government Accountability Office. Its findings, according to French newspapers, included that there had been, quote, repeated postponements of the scheduled modernization of security systems, end quote, with cameras mostly installed, quote, only when rooms have been refurbished, end quote. The Louvre's director later revealed that the only camera monitoring the Gallery of Apollo was pointing away from the balcony the thieves climbed over to break in. Perhaps worst of all, Paris Police Chief Patrice Faure told senators that the first alert to police didn't come from the Louvre's security systems, but from a cyclist outside who dialed the emergency line after seeing the raised basket lift. Even as all of that was coming to light, investigators were looking to DNA analysis and video footage to identify the Louvre thieves, and the first suspect arrests were made shortly afterwards. French prosecutor Laura Becque said in a statement on Sunday of this week that authorities made the arrest Saturday evening after, quote, focusing on a newly surfaced video allegedly showing 2 thieves, end quote, after last week's numerous reports that French authorities were looking into traces of DNA samples that were left on a helmet and gloves in the Gallery of Apollo. The first 2 suspects to be arrested on October 26th are in their late 30s and from the Seine-Saint-Denis area of Paris. One was arrested while prepping to board a flight to Algeria from de Gaulle Airport on Sunday night of last weekend. They were charged Wednesday the 29th with theft by an organized gang and criminal conspiracy after nearly 96 hours in custody. On Thursday the 30th, Becque said that 5 more individuals were detained on Wednesday night in the Paris region during coordinated raids. One of them is thought to be among the 4 caught on CCTV footage entering the gallery, alongside the 2 men who were previously arrested and who have now acknowledged some involvement in the crime, according to BBC. Becque went on to call the French authorities' response a quote-unquote exceptional mobilization of, quote, about 100 investigators 7 days a week with roughly 150 forensic samples analyzed and 189 items sealed as evidence, end quote, according to PBS. Those assigned to this case include the Brigade for the Repression of Banditry, a special police unit in charge of armed robberies, serious burglaries, and art thefts, as well as the Central Office for the Fight Against Trafficking in Cultural Goods. Boy, do those guys need some acronyms. And so here's a recap, honeys, of everything we know now at the end of week 2 out from the heist that we did not prior. As far as the investigation and the Louvre itself, Becque stated that there was no evidence at this stage to suggest the theft was an inside job and confirmed that no accomplices were working at the museum. Also, since the theft, security measures have been tightened around France's cultural institutions across the nation, and the Louvre itself has transferred some of the remaining precious crown jewels to the Bank of France, where they'll be stored in its most secure vault, 26 meters or 85 feet below the ground floor of its Paris headquarters. We also also got an answer to the question, why jewelry? Artnet writes, quote, criminals often target jewelry because it's easier to dismantle and resell discreetly for cash, unlike high-profile artworks, which are easily recognized and difficult to trade on the black market, end quote. We also saw a lot of fear from experts surrounding the possibility of rising gold prices as a motivation for this robbery. Hyperallergic points out it is, quote, the latest in a string of high-value jewelry and gold thefts from museums across Europe, including the theft of gold samples from the Paris Natural History Museum in September, the theft of an 18-karat gold toilet from Blenheim Palace in the UK in February, gold Dacian treasures stolen from the Drents Museum in the Netherlands in January, and the 2019 jewelry heist at the Green Vault of Dresden's Royal Palace in Germany, end quote. We covered each of those 2025 heists as they happened, so check out previous businesses for more information on any of them. In any case, if the crown jewels were stolen from the Louvre for monetary value, it's extremely unlikely that entire pieces will ever be recovered. They will instead almost certainly be broken apart or melted down and sold piecemeal. As you can imagine, honeys, this heist has sent shockwaves through the arts world. It has had some major effects. It's caused trouble at home, plunging the Louvre and the Macron administration into a publicity crisis. Museum director Laurence Descartes said the alarms functioned properly at the time of the heist, but the lack of camera footage in the gallery itself, as well as eyewitnesses, has led to heavy scrutiny of the Louvre security system, as well as her submission of a resignation letter to Culture Minister Rachida Dati, who did not accept the letter. It's also had the effect of shining a light on the forgotten political histories of the French crown jewels and sparking conversation around them. Historian Raphael Dargent, quote, told Art News that the theft of the 8 jewels is especially painful given that they were among the few remaining crown jewels after most were auctioned off in 1887 by the French government both to pay down debt and to rid the newly established Third Republic of monarchical symbols, end quote. But as he explained, these were still sovereigns, heads of state who needed to have the appearance of power, and their jewels, quote, were attributes of that power or political statements, not necessarily a reflection of their own personal taste, end quote. So here's a quick rundown of the stolen jewels, their owners, and how each connected to its context. First, Queen Hortense de Beauharnais. She was the Queen Consort of Holland from 1806 to 1810 when it was part of the French Empire, and the daughter of Empress Josephine from her first marriage to Revolution victim Alexandre Francois Marie, the Vicomte de Beauharnais, and she was the original owner of the stolen sapphire parure, which was later sold to Queen Maria Amalia for financial reasons. Also stolen from Queen Maria Amalia was her diadem. Now, Maria Amalia had a lot of reason to be cautious about flaunting her power during her reign as a queen from 1830 to 1848 because her aunt, Marie Antoinette, had just been guillotined in 1793. She was ruling in a constitutional monarchy period until her husband, King Louis Philippe, was overthrown in yet another French Revolution. Dargent says, quote, the violence was ongoing in France, which was why Louis Philippe wanted to reconcile France with its past. This meant that both he and his wife had to appear forward-looking and not as though they were returning to a form of absolute monarchy. It was important for both of them not to exhibit the crown jewels in public, which could have been seen as a form of provocation, end quote. Maria Amalia made it a point to style herself in a more deliberately modest and bourgeois way, declining to wear the crown jewels in official portraits, but occasionally wearing them in private paintings. What she reportedly valued most, however, was her quote-unquote sentimental jewelry, wearables containing locks of hair or portraits of her many children and grandchildren. Also taken were 2 items belonging to Empress Eugenie, a pearl and diamond tiara acquired in 1992 from Sotheby's for a reported $1 million, and a bow-shaped brooch acquired in '08 for nearly $8 million. Now, Empress Eugenie was the wife of Louis Napoleon Bonaparte, who ruled as empress from 1853 to 1870, so a much different context that allowed her to consider these jewels part of her arsenal, a political form of power. Dargent says, quote, during the Second Empire, there was a desire to revive an older sense of royal splendor, which is why it was important that Empress Eugenie wore these jewels in an official capacity, end quote. Yet again, however, the crown jewels held little personal value for her. She even once told the city of Paris to donate funds intended for a new diamond necklace instead to the construction of a new orphanage, which would later become the Maison Eugene Napoleon. And last we have Empress Marie-Louise, who ruled from 1810 to 1814 and replaced Empress Josephine as the wife of Napoleon I after the former could not produce a male heir. The stolen objects that once belonged to her included a necklace from the jeweler Netat composed of 32 emeralds, 1,138 diamonds, and matching earrings worth a reported $4 million as of 2004, which were given to her as a wedding present by her new husband, and the flashiness of her jewels was also political, although she too preferred sentimental items. Her marriage briefly stabilized the relations between France and Austria as the daughter of the Holy Roman Emperor Francis II, and the gifting of such extravagant jewels to her upon this wedding may have symbolized a gesture of political goodwill between the two countries. Yet the robbery of French crown jewels has also drawn attention to the frequently hushed colonial histories surrounding them. These are more than iconic objects with considerable aesthetic, historical, economic, cultural value. They are also products of colonial and imperialist mining operations across Asia, Africa, and South America as part of systemic regional exploitation of their cultural and natural resources to enrich European courts and empires. For example, the 212 natural pearls found in Empress Eugenie's diadem, which are now largely depleted through centuries of overharvesting, we might add, would have come from the Persian Gulf or Indian Ocean, where French colonial outposts and broader European networks fueled by slavery funneled such valuable resources, aka status symbols, to royal courts and elite collectors in Europe. The continued display, until the heist at least, of these crown jewels in the Louvre was in some ways a continuation of this legacy. The French crown jewels stood in the Gallery of Apollo as a symbol meant to communicate the richness, the culture, aka the status and value of French heritage and political history to visitors of the Louvre. Overall, the robbery has raised fundamental questions of, quote, how and why museums protect their collections, end quote, with some of our sources arguing that effective heritage protection requires sustained government investment, specialized law enforcement, and cross-sector collaboration, as well as ethical reckonings about who should own and or steward what. Writes Emmeline Smith for Hyperallergic, quote, the erosion of cultural stewardship under the weight of bureaucracy, spectacle, and historical amnesia has exposed a deeper illusion that Western museums can indefinitely guard what was never truly theirs, end quote. That long-held assumption is now cracking under the pressure of public scrutiny, historical reckoning, and all of these heists, however, quote, in an age when empires are being re-examined and calls for repatriation are growing louder, not every cultural object can or should remain behind glass, end quote. That is, of course, not an endorsement for you to steal things for your own personal gain. We're just saying that she made a point there. Ultimately, the burglary at the Louvre has drawn attention to the fact that France has overall made very limited progress in living up to its own restitution guidelines and repatriation promises since President Emmanuel Macron made his vow to return colonial looted cultural objects back in 2017. All right, I know that was a lot, honeys, but I hope you enjoyed this in-depth look into the madness that is the Louvre robbery of 2025. The how it happened is fairly impressive, but we think the why it matters are even more fascinating, and hopefully you agree. We'll leave it there for the day, but remind you to catch our 5-minute musical dropping in honor of Halloween. We've chosen Michael Jackson's Thriller this month. Tune into that episode on Patreon. Hydrate or dihydrate, take care, and we'll talk soon. This podcast is produced, created, hosted, formerly edited, and fact-checked by master's degree holder Celia Bugnout. Chris Meinhold is responsible for our editing, mixing, and our intro and outro music. Special thanks to him for that. And as always, remember to like, subscribe, share, comment, so on all your favorite listening as well as social media channels.